convene this evening to honor and pay tribute to the life and extraordinary legacy of Senator Lindsey Graham, lawyer, patriot, veteran, Air Force colonel, lawmaker, and of course, United States Senator for over 20 years. Many of us remember Lindsey Graham for being an extraordinary defender of America and American values. Many of us champion his profound commitment to the Jewish people, to the Jewish welfare, and of course, to the state of Israel. But it's also no less important that we remember what a mensch he was and how kind he was to others. Someone who really made friendships across the aisle and treated people with decency. And now, at a time in our country where there's so much moral confusion and so much acrimony, to honor the life of somebody who represents truly commitment to principle and true decency is a worthy cause indeed. I want to begin with a story that I remember very fondly from my time with Senator Graham. When I was in government, I spent time in Israel, and one of those trips to Israel coincided with the trip that he took. I always heard growing up the legendary stories of Scoop Jackson, an incredibly pro-Israel senator, and how he would be met in Israel with riotous applause. People would gather and hold up signs, "We love Scoop." Lo and behold, I would see the same kind of riotous applause for Lindsey Graham. Israelis from all walks of life would turn out and cheer and applaud and say, "Thank you, Lindsey," and "Thank you." And it was extraordinary to see how deeply his work was appreciated and loved and embraced. I can also say on those trips, every time he and I had a chance to talk, it was always an incredible education and deep pleasure to interact with him. All of us were stunned by the news of his sudden passing after his sudden illness. And we truly were heartbroken. But you know, the sages of the Talmud teach us that it is possible for those of us among the living truly to reach out and touch the souls of the departed. And we can do that not by words. Words are important. But we can do that by devoting ourselves to the causes for which those great figures gave so much of themselves and lived so fully. And so it is our hope, as you listen to this program and hear from really an extraordinary breadth of leaders and philanthropists and members of Congress and leaders of the Jewish people and leaders outside of the Jewish people, that we are left with a sense of renewed commitment to the values for which Lindsey Graham lived with such passion. Throughout this program, we will also intersperse just a few very short videos of moments of Lindsey Graham's, his speeches and his hearings, where he set forth so powerfully what moved him in life. And so, again, thank you for being here. And it is now my honor to introduce a very short video that I think will speak for itself and show what a champion he was for the Jewish people and for values that are truly American values.
What I would like this committee to do is deal with the systematic problems that exist regarding what's going on American colleges today. What's going on in colleges today, there's an organized effort to intimidate, harass, and physically assault Jewish students. What's going on today is an effort on multiple fronts to wipe Israel off the map.
It is my honor to introduce to you a dear friend, the chair of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. That makes her the top leader of the Jewish people. Also a past national president of AIPAC, an organization, of course, that knows Lindsey Graham very well. My dear friend, Betsy Berns Korn.
Good evening, and thank you, Elan, and thank you to the Israeli American Council for bringing us together to honor the life and legacy of Senator Lindsey Graham. It is a true privilege to join you as chair of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Tonight, I think of Lindsey Graham as so many in our community knew him: a devoted public servant, a trusted friend of the American Jewish community, and one of Israel's most steadfast champions in the United States Senate. Lindsey Graham understood that support for Israel wasn't a political position, it was a matter of principle. He understood that Israel's security advanced American national security, strengthened regional stability, and reflected the democratic values shared by our two nations. And he lived that understanding. For decades, Senator Graham met moments of uncertainty, war, and international pressure with resolve. He confronted Iran and its terrorist proxies. He spoke forcefully against anti-Semitism and extremism. He brought strategic judgment and statesmanship to some of the most consequential foreign policy challenges of our time. But what made Lindsey so extraordinary wasn't only what he believed, it was how personally and consistently he showed up. I can't count the number of times I traveled to Israel in urgent moments with breaking news unfolding, meetings shifting by the hour, and everyone moving as quickly as they could to understand what came next. And then almost invariably, our group would arrive at the Prime Minister's office, and there was Lindsey Graham, either just coming out as we were going in or walking in just as we were leaving. After a while, it almost became funny to see him. And this wasn't just unique to me or to our group. As so many of you experienced, you'd make the long trip, race through the schedule, think you were moving fast, and somehow Lindsey and his staff already there, already briefed, already asking the next question, and already formulating a strategy. That was Lindsey. He was present, he was engaged, he listened carefully and moved with purpose. He built trust with Israeli leaders and American Jewish organizations. He built coalitions across the aisle and developed relationships with communities who valued his wise counsel, judgment, and his leadership. To me, to the conference, to the Jewish community, and to the people of Israel, Senator Graham was more than an ally. He was a true friend. Friends like Lindsey Graham come along once in a generation. His conviction, his warmth, and tireless commitment to the U.S.-Israel relationship leave an enduring legacy, and his example will continue to inspire all who believe in the bond between America, Israel, and the Jewish people. May his family, his staff, his Senate colleagues, and the people of South Carolina draw strength from the extraordinary life he lived, the service he gave, and the principles he never stopped defending. May his memory be a blessing. Thank you.
Betsy, thank you so much for those powerful words and those personal words. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to introduce to you the CEO of the Jewish Federations of North America, former United States Congressman Eric Fingerhut.
Thank you, Ambassador Carr, and thank you to the Israel American Council for organizing this important memorial. It's my pleasure to speak tonight representing the 141 Jewish federations across America, as well as the leadership of the Jewish Federations of North America and our chair, Gary Torgo of Detroit. I also want to acknowledge the leadership of our federations in South Carolina, whose grief is especially acute. Tair Judijay, the CEO of the Jewish Federation in Charleston, and Jesse DeSalkel, the CEO of the Jewish Federation in Columbia. I was in Israel when I heard the news of Senator Graham's passing. And then, as fate would have it, I was on my way to Ukraine the following day. It occurred to me as I processed this sad news that these two places, Israel and Ukraine, exemplified the core of Lindsey Graham's moral and political leadership. These are the two places where dictators and despots and terrorists have, in recent years, subjected free and peace-loving peoples to immense pain, physical and emotional harm, and profound loss. These are also two places where too many world leaders have failed openly and repeatedly to clearly distinguish between the aggressor and the victim, and have failed over and over again to stand by the victims as they seek to defend themselves. And so it is the essence of leadership that Lindsey Graham stood with Israel and Ukraine consistently in their times of greatest need. He never faltered. He never wavered. He never apologized. And he always made clear that the stakes were nothing less than what is right and what is wrong, what is moral and what is immoral, what is true and what is just. There's much more to say about Lindsey Graham's life and work, and I trust it will be said during this evening and throughout this period of mourning. But nothing makes clearer why he was a great man and why he was one of the greatest senators in American history than these two battles he waged with vigor until his last hour. Elie Wiesel, on the occasion of presenting the report of the President's Commission on the Holocaust to President Carter, said, "We must take seriously all those who threaten other people today, and all those who threaten the Jewish people today. From words to deeds, the distance is not great." Wiesel continued, "We also must learn the dangers of indifference and neutrality. In times of evil, indifference to evil is evil. Neutrality always helps the killer, not the victim." Lindsey Graham always took seriously all those who threaten other people. Lindsey Graham always took seriously all those who threatened the Jewish people. Lindsey Graham understood the dangers of indifference and neutrality. And Lindsey Graham understood that neutrality helps the killer, not the victim. Lindsey Graham was not neutral. He took sides. He was not indifferent. He was passionate and committed and relentless. Tonight, we share our grief on the loss of such a leader. Tomorrow evening, Jews around the world will recite the Book of Lamentations, recalling the darkest moments in Jewish history. And then this Sabbath, we will read the words of the prophet Isaiah, "Nachamu, Nachamu Ami." "Comfort, comfort my people," says God. The prophet continues, "Dabru al lev Yerushalayim," speak tenderly on the hearts of Jerusalem. The question our sages asked is, why does the prophet say on our hearts and not in our hearts? The answer is that sometimes pain and confusion is so great that comfort and understanding starts on our hearts and then gradually seeps into our hearts. Senator Lindsey Graham understood better than most that not every message of truth or of comfort starts deep in the hearts of people. But if we let it sit on our hearts, it will, with time, seep into our hearts. And so he never stopped putting on our hearts messages of truth and messages of encouragement. He urged us to take into our hearts the responsibility to act with courage and steadfastness, to do our part to right the wrongs of the world. He couldn't force people to follow his heart, but he did everything he could to try and encourage us to do so. This is the true legacy of Senator Lindsey Graham. Nachamu, Nachamu. May his family and friends be comforted, and may his memory be a blessing.
Thank you so much, Eric. So well said. It was really a few days after October 7th that Senator Graham made a trip to Israel. And we'll show you a very short clip of a speech he gave a couple of months thereafter.
I got briefed by the defense minister, and there was a young guy who was a two-star general, and he watches Fox, so he knows me. And he said, "Senator Graham, we failed." And he started crying, and I started crying. He's the IDF guy. We failed. I failed my people. I said, "Stop. You're not the only country to miss a threat, Pearl Harbor, 9/11. It happens. Here's what failing is: not doing the right thing after you make a mistake.
I'm honored to introduce someone who knows that speech very well. He was in the room. National Chairman of the RJC, former United States Senator Norm Coleman.
Elan, thank you so much for pulling this tribute to honor our friend Lindsey Graham. And thank you to everyone who's joined us tonight, across the country, around the world, to honor the memory and remember our friend Lindsey Graham. I want to begin where Lindsey always began, which is with people. For all his titles, the committee gavels that he held, all the history he helped make and shape, he cared most about his family, his staff, by the way, because they were family, and friends. Lindsey was a brother to me. We were both elected to the United States Senate in 2002, and we remained close ever since. Our friendship didn't stay on the Senate floor. It followed us home long after the votes were counted and the cameras were off. That was Lindsey. Once he decided you were his friend for life. He had a way of making you feel like you've known him for years, whether it was your first conversation or your 50th. He'd call you out of nowhere, crack a joke that had no business being funny. And in the same breath, he'd ask about your family. He always asked me about my health, the things you were worried about. He listened and remembered. In a town that too often forgets, Lindsey remembered. To our Jewish community, Lindsey was more than an ally. He was family, and he said so himself. Reflecting once on how our community had rallied around him, he put it simply, we are family. And he meant it. In fact, at the RJC Leadership Summit taking place next month in Las Vegas, we will be dedicating the event in his memory and awarding the first annual Lindsey Graham Statesman Award. Sheldon and Miriam Adelson were in particular two of Lindsey's anchors. I'm humbled to be on the program tonight with Miriam. They always had us back. Before we started, Miriam said this, I think Sheldon and Lindsey talked once a week. They were always talking. When he went into battle, he was comforted by knowing that they would be with him. We honor and will honor that special relationship for years to come. In our tradition, there is no higher tribute than to call someone a righteous friend of the Jewish people, one who stands with us, not because it is convenient, because it is right. Our people have long memories. We remember those who stood with us when the world looked away. Lindsey was there all the times. He showed up at our conferences, at our dinner tables, at the Jewish community's side in the darkest hours. And he asked for nothing in return but our friendship. There's the Hebrew phrase we say of the departed, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha, may the memory of the righteous be a blessing. Tonight and every year we gather in his name. That is exactly what Lindsey's memory will be. Lindsey proved his fidelity decade after decade in his record, and particularly championed and introduced the Tail Force Act. One of the RJC board members, Sandra Gerber, developed this concept of no pay for slay. Many were afraid to even touch the issue, but Lindsey Graham ran with it and made it happen. He also championed anti-BDS legislation. He led the fight to stop the disastrous Obama-Iran nuclear deal. He was a driving force between us moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan, and the trailblazing Abraham Accord peace agreements. I also had the opportunity to travel with Lindsey on many occasions to Jerusalem and Riyadh on his shuttle diplomacy, as he carried and kept alive the flame for Saudi-Israel-U.S. partnership in the Middle East. One of Lindsey's most memorable trips to Israel, I believe, was just 15 days after the horror of October 7th. For Lindsey, there was never a question about where he stood. He said it for years he believed in a simple axiom: Israel's security is America's security. And that wasn't a talking point. It was a conviction that was bone deep for Lindsey Graham. And it came from somewhere. Lindsey knew hardship early on. You've probably all heard this story, growing up in a single family, in a single room behind his family's bar business in central South Carolina. Lost both of his parents before he was 21, became the guardian of his youngest sister, Darlene, who is now serving in his seat in the U.S. Senate and will be running for her brother's seat. He put himself through law school, raised his sister, served our country in uniform. He understood in a way you can only understand by living it, that strength must protect the vulnerable and that America's strength keeps the whole world safer. That's why he fought so passionately. I think about the friendship he shared with John McCain and Joe Lieberman, known as the Three Amigos. that trio that was rare and beautiful in American public life. Three men, different faiths, different parties, bound together by love of country and of freedom. They were the best friends the Jewish people and the cause of liberty ever had in the United States Senate. I like to believe John and Joe are waiting for him and that the three of them are together again. But I'll be honest with you tonight, even as we take comfort that our hearts break because Lindsey had so much left to give, he was not finished. There were more fights he wanted to win, more people he wanted to lift up, more good he wanted to do. We were not ready to lose him. So let me close simply. Our community is diminished tonight. The United States Senate is diminished tonight. But every one of us who knew Lindsey Graham is richer for it and better for it. To Darlene, his staff, and everyone who loved him, you are in our hearts, you are in our prayers. To Lindsey, my friend, we thank you for the historic wins, for the laughter, for your loyalty, and for your love, for standing with us always. May his memory be a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. Speaking of champions of the Jewish people, Pastor John Hagee, the founder and chairman of Christians United for Israel, senior pastor of Cornerstone Church in San Antonio, wanted to be here tonight, but because of a conflict has submitted the following video message.
Senator Lindsey Graham was a giant among men. He was a defender of Zion, a true and faithful friend to me and countless others. If you were honored to have known him, you know no one could light up a room or command a conversation as he did. Senator Graham used his influence for good, defending our American values, strengthening our national security interest, and advocating for Israel. History will remember him as a servant leader who loved his country and worked relentlessly to secure its strength and safety. Senator Graham's life was dedicated to service, whether serving his country in the military for over 30 years, representing South Carolina in Congress for more than 3 decades, or caring for his family after losing his parents when he was only 22 years of age. Lindsey spent nearly every day of his adult life serving other people. Today, we may mourn his loss here on this earth, but he's not lost. Something is lost only when you don't know where it is. We know where the senator is. He is in the loving arms of his Redeemer and has heard the words, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." To quote Lindsey directly, as he said from CUFI's stage, quote, "When you get to heaven, they're not going to ask you if you were a Republican or a Democrat. But when the good Lord asked me what I did for Israel, I can check that box." End of quote. Heaven has gained a champion of freedom and liberty. Senator Graham finished his race here on earth, but if he were here, I know he would want me to encourage everyone within the sound of my voice to press toward the goal of the prize of the upward call of God. We must honor Senator Graham's legacy by living faithfully and sacrificially every day of our lives, as Lindsey did, in the service of other people. Thank you for such a shining example of a loyal servant, Senator. Until we meet again in God's tomorrow, rest well, dear friend, rest well.
It's now my honor to introduce the Executive Vice President of American Friends of Lubavitch Chabad, Rabbi Levi Shem Tov.
Good evening, and thank you very much to the IAC and to Elan Carr and the team for hosting this very fitting tribute. The one mitzvah commandment that we receive from God more often than any other in all of the Torah is not to have fear. This goes all the way back to Avraham Avinu, our first patriarch, who was told not to fear, and then through the ages and the prophets, that was the foremost directive. A good friend of ours, Norm Brownstein, who was so close, like a brother to Lindsey, would often tell me that the one thing about Lindsey Graham was that he had a genuine friendship with the Jewish people and a genuine concern for the needs of the Jewish people and for the needs that Israel had, whatever they were. And he always would reiterate that, not only in words, but in practice. As our good friend Eric Fingerhut pointed out before, this Shabbat after Tisha B'Av, we will read the words of the prophets, Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, be comforted, our nation. One of the interpretations of why it says Nachamu twice is because God is with us in all of our dilemmas. And he too needs to be comforted because his dilemma and his difficulty is our difficulty. And through our faith, we pull through what is unfortunately a very dark time, not only in missing our good friend Lindsey Graham, but in mourning the very destruction of our temple, which begins tomorrow night for 25 hours. Lindsey Graham served in uniform. Many people don't know, but he still stayed in the reserves for many years. And as I once told a three-star admiral who I met at an event, I said, "Sir, you know, it's because of the sacrifice you perform wearing your uniform that I'm able to do the work I do wearing mine." And I think we have to take this moment remembering Lindsey Graham and pray for all of our soldiers who are in harm's way, both the United States Armed Forces and the members of the IDF who are vulnerable in these days, and ask that God protect them. Darkness is very real, but in the Jewish tradition, light always follows darkness. And Tisha B'Av may be the darkest day in the Jewish calendar, but we are told by the sages that one day, when Mashiach comes, very soon, it will become the most joyous, because within darkness, within negativity, there is always the latent opposite. So as we see dark forces in the political world that are beginning to emerge and expand, sadly, let us not forget the bright ones we've been fortunate to know, people like Senator Lindsey Graham. The Jewish people have survived for millennia through strong faith in God and through the many agents and messengers that God sent from outside the Jewish community to be our friends, our supporters, and those who reinforced us. So I think that in that vein, and in honor of Senator Graham, I yield back the balance of my time, as they say on the Hill, to my colleague from Charleston, South Carolina, who can speak not only as a prominent member of the Jewish community there, who was a friend of Lindsey Graham, but was also one of his constituents. And I think he may share an anecdote or two of personal experience with him that will show you just how deeply connected Senator Graham was to the Jewish community on a personal level, and how wonderful a friend he always was. And we hope that he'll always be remembered that way.
Are we cutting to the rabbi?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Rabbi Shem Tov. For many people in Washington who support Israel, there were very few who were like Lindsey Graham, who truly loved the Jewish people. To him, the Jewish cause wasn't merely important, it was holy. He didn't stand with us because it was strategic or because it polled well. He stood with us because he believed it was right and he believed it was just. More than once, he told me that protecting Israel is truly America first, because he believed with everything in him in the ancient promise that those who bless the Jewish people themselves will be blessed. So for South Carolina, this is a tremendous political loss. But for the Jewish community in South Carolina, even for those that never voted for him or never planned on voting for him, it's a deeply personal loss. And just indulge me, I'll share just a couple of brief stories about Lindsey. So on a Sunday morning in 2018, it was October 2018, Senator Graham came to our Chabad house in Mount Pleasant for a small breakfast. It was just a handful of people. And he was about to sit down when his phone rang, and it was the White House operator. and the president wanted to talk to him. So he went into my office so he could talk privately. And he came back an hour later. Half of us were still there waiting for him. And he told us what had transpired. He said the president had been talking to him about Israel. And Senator Graham urged him that it was time to recognize the Golan Heights as part of Israel. And the president asked him a question: what's driving this? And what's inspiring you? And Senator Graham told us that he told the president, I'm sitting in an office, and in front of me is the Hebrew Bible. And it says right there in plain words that this land belongs to the Jewish people. And he said, with my hand on the book, I told the president that it's time to recognize the Golan Heights. It's the smart thing to do, it's the just thing to do, and it's the right thing to do. And the following spring, we saw Senator Graham standing on Golan Heights with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and later on how the president embraced that. A lone senator inspired by the Bible. About 9 months ago, a second story, about 9 months ago, a young family came into Chabad, and they said they wanted to get involved. They wanted to put their child in Hebrew school and their younger child in preschool, and they become part of the community. And last week, after Senator Graham passed away, they told me the backstory. And he said, we came from New York and we were completely unaffiliated. We never sent out, we never did anything Jewish. But when we moved to Charleston around 9 months ago, when I arrived in the airport, just after I landed and got out of the airport, I spotted Senator Graham getting into his car. So I ran over to him and I said, Senator, I just wanted to shake your hand. I'm moving here from New York. And one of the reasons I chose this place is because of your deep support for Israel. It makes me feel so welcome here. And Senator Graham looked at him and he asked him one question. He said, are you Jewish? And the young man said, yes. And this is what the United States Senator said to a stranger who he'd only known for 30 seconds. He said, I can protect the borders of Israel, but you have to protect the soul of Israel. Where you're moving to, there's a Chabad house right near. Before you unpack, go in and tell Yossi that I sent you, and make sure that your children are there. Make sure they're learning their tradition. Make sure they're being embraced by their heritage. Because all that I can do is protect the borders, but you have to protect the soul, and that's how you protect the soul. May his memory inspire each of us to do our part, to protect both the body and the soul of Israel, as we can each do only in our own way. And think about this. The love came from a Baptist from Central, a small mill town in upstate South Carolina. He owed us nothing, but he gave us his everything. May God bless your memory, Senator Graham, and may it be a blessing to the people and to the land and to the countries that you loved. Thank you.
Rabbis, thank you so much for those incredible stories. Very powerful. We're going to show you another clip now. As we all know, Senator Graham was a fighter, and you didn't want to get on his bad side. Here's a clip from one of his hearings.
Do you believe Iran really wants to kill all the Jews if they could? The Iranian regime, yeah. Do you believe Hamas is serious when they say we'll keep doing it over and over again? Do you agree that they will if they can?
I do. Hamas,
okay, right. Do you believe that Hezbollah is a terrorist organization also bent on the destruction of the Jewish state?
Hezbollah is a terrorist organization.
Okay, so Israel's been hit in the last few weeks by Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, dedicated to their destruction. And you're telling me you're going to tell them how to fight the war and what they can and can't use when everybody around them wants to kill all the Jews? And you're telling me that if we withhold weapons in this fight, the existential fight for the life of the Jewish state, it won't send the wrong signal? If we stop weapons necessary to destroy the enemies of the state of Israel at a time of great peril. We will pay a price. This is obscene. It is absurd. Give Israel what they need to fight the war they can't afford to lose.
That's Senator Graham. Ted Deutch, former congressman and CEO of AJC, the American Jewish Committee, couldn't be here. He had a conflict, very much wanted to be here. And so please listen to his taped remarks.
Hi, it's Ted Deutch from AJC. I'm really honored to be a part of this program this evening. And I want to just take a few moments that I have with you to share some reflections about Lindsey that may be different from what others are sharing. We all know that Lindsey is incredibly committed to the safety and security of the state of Israel, that it was personal to him, that he worked tirelessly to stand up on behalf of Israel to fight against the Iranian threat. He understood that what's in the best interest of Israel in the region and the role that Israel plays in the region is in the best interest of America. We understand that. I wanted to talk about something different, which is the opportunity that I had to get to know Senator Graham, to get to know Lindsey when we traveled together. A lot of you may know that members of Congress don't often, when they're in Washington, don't often have the opportunity to spend time together apart from the political fray. But traveling is a really important way to do that. And after I was elected to Congress, Senator Lieberman invited me to come on a delegation with him and Senator McCain and Senator Graham and some others to Munich for the Munich Security Conference. It's the largest gathering of important national security figures from around the world. And at that meeting, what was so clear to me, well, there were a couple things that were clear to me about Lindsey. One, I was a junior member of the House participating in a delegation that was primarily, in the early days, a Senate delegation. And it would have been easy for Lindsey to simply brush me aside as a senior member of the Senate on this trip with his two important colleagues. But in all of the meetings that we had, and the delegations, the bilateral meetings that we had with officials from around the world, important officials, prime ministers, foreign ministers, presidents, everybody wanted to meet with this group. Lindsey always went out of his way to make sure that he included all of us and to make sure that in those meetings, everyone's voice was heard. And the reason that was so important is because as someone who understood and consistently stood for the importance of American leadership, and especially the vital importance of the transatlantic relationship, Lindsey knew that there was real power in this delegation showing up as Democrats and Republicans, speaking with one voice about American priorities and about the need for America to strengthen its ties with Europe, about America and the important role that it plays in NATO. This was what Lindsey did, and to see him in these meetings and to understand that the differences that existed among Democrats and Republicans back in Washington were profound. And as we know, even then, but especially today, the differences tend to dominate the headlines. What we saw very clearly was that it was important to the rest of the world to experience American leadership the way that Lindsey Graham understood it, the way that John McCain understood it, the way that Joe Lieberman understood it, which was standing together as Americans to strengthen the relationships that America relies upon. These were sometimes challenging meetings. The senators were not shy about making clear what it is that America believed in, the importance of America's role in Europe, the importance of America's role in the world, with challenges that were happening from year to year, with challenges that were happening in every corner of the world. And Lindsey he always understood why it was so important for us to do that together. And then it was also just so greatly appreciated by me and others on the delegation to know that we weren't expected to sit there and remain silent, that we had constituencies, that we represented important parts of the United States, and that it was important for our voices to be heard in these meetings as well. Lindsey Graham understood that well, and when I think about what we'll miss about him, the way that he stood up for American leadership, understanding that especially that how much that leadership was strengthened when we did it together as Americans, Democrats and Republicans standing together. That's the way that I'm going to remember him, and I think it's really important for all of us to think about that and reflect upon that in the way that we go about our work, whether we work in the Jewish world, we work in the government or diplomatic world, or whether we're just American citizens who are thinking about how to make the country better for all of us. And again, thanks so much for giving me this opportunity to join with you. And may Lindsey rest in peace.
You know, hearing that gives you hope for getting back to an era of collegiality. God willing, we can get there with role models like Senator Graham. We will shortly hear from our final speaker, Dr. Miriam Adelson. However, we first have very special last-minute guests to our program, participants. I'm really touched to have them here with us, and it's really my deep honor to introduce to you Orna and Ronen Nutra, the parents of IDF Captain Omer Nutra of blessed memory, who was murdered, an American Israeli, by the way, who was murdered on October 7th and whose body was then taken hostage in Gaza. And they were tireless champions, not only for their son, but for all the hostages. And we are so grateful to have them here with us today. Orna, Ronen, thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you very much, Elan, and for giving us this opportunity to honor Senator Lindsey Graham. We are really humbled to hear to hear everyone share their personal connection with him. Our family came to know Senator Graham shortly after October 7th, when our son, Captain Omer Nutra, was taken hostage. From the earliest days of the crisis, Senator Graham was one of the strongest and most consistent voices in the Senate supporting Israel and calling for the hostages to be released. He spoke clearly about Iran's role in supporting Hamas and argued that Hamas could not remain in power after the war. Just weeks after the attacks, as was mentioned, he led a bipartisan delegation to Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Egypt. He believed that Hamas shouldn't derail efforts to normalize relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, and that strengthening the regional coalition against Iran and its proxies offered the most realistic path to defeating Hamas and securing the hostages' release. He was committed to advancing this effort across party lines, as was mentioned, and he met with us in Israel when he was on one of these delegations, and he said, "I work for the president. I'm a servant for the cause, and I'll do whatever is needed." We met Senator Graham in Washington shortly after October 7th and again in Israel, where other members of our family also met with him, and whenever we asked to meet, he made himself available. He was straightforward and matter of fact. He never told us what we wanted to hear, only what he believed. He offered no false hope. He listened carefully. He asked thoughtful questions, and he treated our concerns with seriousness and respect. During one of those meetings with hostage families, he said something, that stayed with us. "I wish you were all my constituents. I wish you were all from South Carolina," as if to say that he wished he could do even more for each and every one of us personally. Our family and the hostage families will always be grateful for his time, his honesty, and his steadfast support for Israel and the hostage families. May his memory be a blessing.
It is my pleasure to introduce to you someone who really needs no introduction, physician, businesswoman, philanthropist, and someone who, along with her late husband, Sheldon, whom we miss every day, have been among the most transformative leaders the Jewish people have known in centuries, literally. My deepest pleasure to introduce to you my friend, and I call her my mentor as well, Dr. Miriam Adelson. Can you unmute her? Miri, you're on mute. 1 second.
We were very close friends of Lindsey. Sheldon, we met him in 1990, approximately. There was a mission of AIPAC, and we took freshman congressmen, Republican, to Israel. So we and Sheldon and me and another two partners of Sheldon paid for the trip, donated it to AIPAC educational group, something like that. And then we met Lindsey. And I want to tell you, I, as a physician, I love to see the brain. I mean, and the eyes are our brain. And they were so pure and blue. And I mean, you could see what he's thinking about. He was so honest, with integrity. And Sheldon and me fell in love with him. And the relationship continued for years, as was mentioned it. I talked today with his secretary, Betty, and I asked her, tell me more about the relationship. She was telling me every day, there was not a day that Sheldon talked with Lindsey. They were talked about Israel. Lindsey gave him advice, Sheldon gave him advice, and they had fun. One day, Lindsey came with part of the Musketeers, as you call them. Lieberman was not there, but Senator McCain was, and another lady that I wouldn't mention her name because she's serving now. So excuse me. And we had dinner, we were laughing, enjoyed. And then Senator McCain wanted to gamble. But we understood he didn't want to be seen. Senator is gambling in Las Vegas. So Sheldon called his assistant, prepared the VIP room with one table, and nobody can enter there. So here are the three musketeers, I mean, almost the three musketeers. They need a woman to represent them. And Senator McCain knew how to play crab. Lindsey didn't know. So Senator McCain tried to teach him. And Lindsey wasn't interested. So in the middle of the round, he will go out and talk with people. And of course, he lost money, and Senator McCain made money. It was very, very funny to see them. So I remember we were all the time crying and telling how great. I want to add something that you will smile and love it about Lindsey. He instead of playing, he didn't like playing. I don't know if he really played in his life. He didn't get, Senator McCain tried to teach him, didn't work. So, and he was meeting people. Lindsey loved people, and they loved him. From the left, from the right, he was a fantastic person. When I came to Washington always, and lately, you know, the inauguration and things like this, I always called him, and he would come to dinner with me, and we talked about Sheldon, and about life, about Israel, of course, about the Golan, about Jerusalem. He was an amazing person. I have lost one of the people that I most admire and loved. And I want to say to end with talking to Darlene, his sister. You know, when I knew Sheldon, before I was introduced to him, it was blind date. And I asked, who is he? They say, he married when he was 32. He was married first time. And the woman had 3 kids, and he adopted them. I say, wow, to myself, this must be a good man, an interesting man, to adopt three children in his first marriage. At that time, I had two girls. And so immediately he made for me a good impression of, there was not Google at that time. I didn't know who he is, just a Jewish community member in Boston. So I guess, Sarah, you are watching. She was the matchmaker. And probably I brought some smile to her. Sarah from Boston. And so when I heard about Lindsey, that he adopted his sister to get her the benefit or to help her, I mean, that's exactly what I thought immediately when they told me about Sheldon. He's a good man. Inside the heart is such a good man. And I want to tell you, Darlene, that if ever we send you these videos, that I really admired and loved your brother. I miss him. Maybe you will come one time to dinner when I'm in Washington instead of him, as you're sitting as senator. So God bless you. I hope you continue, as God say, from choose life. That's what I kept telling myself when Sheldon passed away. The good and evil I gave you, and you choose life. So please choose life and success in your senator seat, and know that so many people loved your brother and admired him. And well, I'm starting to have tears here, so here's the time to stop. 5 minutes I was giving, and now I see I'm 6 minutes. Sorry. Bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adelson. Tears are appropriate at an occasion like this. But you read our minds. You said that you wanted to end with a story that makes us smile, and you did. And so you read our minds, because our final video clip that we're going to show you is a little bit light. Senator Graham was someone who also loved to have fun and loved to kid around and loved to joke. And so this is our final video clip.
He loved life.
You really did.
I'm not so sure this is a good idea to give me a gun before 7 o'clock. Where's the local hospital at? Okay, y'all ready? Yep. All right, pull. Hey, there you go. What do you do for a living? That was a good tip. You want to come work for the government? You want to be Secretary of Defense? Misfire, didn't it? That was made in Iran. I hope the Iranians and the Iraqis are watching. Pull! That was a tough one there. Running out of bullets, boys. Yeah, it just moved out fast. Yeah, that was low and to the left. That was another right one. Yeah, that was right. We're conservatives. That is center right. Throw to the left.
Yeah, them lefts are tough.
I'm more bipartisan than you are. Pull! We'll get that shot. That's third in a row right there.
That was Senator Graham. As Dr. Adelson said, he loved life. He loved people. Boy, he loved America. And he also loved the Jewish people in Israel. And, you know, we don't believe in coincidences by chance in the Jewish people. It's all providential. We convene here this evening during the 9 days shortly before Tisha B'Av, a day of real mourning and calamity. And Rabbi Shem Tov reminded us that in the era of redemption, the sorrow and the tragedy of Tisha B'Av will become joy because God's ways will be revealed. Now, how do we bring that day about? If there is anything we can do to hasten that day of redemption for all of us, it's to live a life of purpose, to love our country, to devote ourselves to principle, to bring people together, to care for others, including, yes, to adopt people when they need adoption, to fight for the Jewish people, to fight for principle and justice. And that means, yes, fighting for the state of Israel as well. And if we all do that, and if we all live by the example that Senator Graham provided us, then just maybe, we will bring that day of redemption ever closer. May his memory be a blessing, and may all of us be continued to be inspired by the example that he gave us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your schedules to spend this evening with us in this most worthy cause. Good night.